I am here with Andrew Migliore, the founder of the Portland Lovecraft Festival and Cthulhu-thon, as well as of Lurker Film, his organization. And welcome. Hello. What drew you to Lovecraft?
Interesting question. Well, as with many people who like H.P. Lovecraft, I think was a teenager. I was starting to read horror, and there was many anthology books, and it just captured my attention. Not only, I mean, it was just interesting. It was different than most of the other horror science fiction that I was reading at the time. It had something that lingered afterwards, and it wasn't like strictly, you know, man versus man, like, you know, that kind of horror with a knife, or it was really this our place in the universe. So, in not to sound odd, but it had kind of a weirdly spiritual component to it. Our position in the universe, in the cosmos, and it was dark. I mean, it was a bit dark. And for moving, I went to 3 different high schools, and I felt a bit like an outsider and a loner. And I think that Lovecraft's writing really resonated with that. You know, it had a prevailing sense of desolation and loneliness, and this meticulously developed atmosphere that it just captured my attention. That, on top of the fact I was living in Rhode Island at the time, so I was in Providence, Rhode Island, and I'm, you know, around the corner from all these landmarks for Lovecraft. You know, actually, I walked the streets that Lovecraft walked. I think a combination of those things made it very, very interesting. So that's what, and it just it stayed with me.
Well, I've heard this is the 14th year of the festival in its 17th incarnation. So how has it evolved?
It started out back in the early day of the internets. You know, I had a website called Beyond Books, and I really had started this website as a software engineer, trying to determine what people went through, the experience they had to set up a website using an internet service provider, because we were trying to develop a publishing system for newspapers. So I said, well, I need to know what people go through, how to maintain links, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, well, I need content. And I quickly said, oh, I know what I'll do. I'll make a website about Lovecraft movies, you know, because there's Reanimator and, you know, From Beyond and all that stuff, and the Haunted Palace, et cetera, et cetera. So I think I put up a website with 24 films, you know, feature films that I thought were Lovecraftian. And this was back in 1995, early 1995. And in the early days of the web, I started getting people emailing me and saying, you know, when I was in college, I made a Lovecraft short film, and I said, really, I'd love to see it. So the 2 people who first contacted me back in that time period were John Stryzik, and he was the first, and he had an adaptation of Music Verzon, and I really liked it. It was like, wow, this is much more serious. He was actually trying to adapt the works of Lovecraft versus exploiting it, and so I said, hey, can I do an interview with you? And I did an interview on the website with him. And another person, Aaron Vanek, who did another short film called The Outsider, contacted me because of that, because they both had gone to the same college, Columbia College in Chicago. And it wasn't, I don't know what happened. I think John Stryzik and I were talking, and, you know, he said, hey, maybe you should show my film. And I think I misinterpreted it and saying, all right, I'll do a film festival. And I mean, it's silly as that. That's basically what happened. I decided, all right, well, if I had a feature and I showed a couple shorts, it would be a great evening, and I'll do this. Maybe I'll show it 3 times and do it over a weekend. So with John Stryzik's help, I contacted producer Brian Usna, and he had finished a film called The Necronomicon at the time, a feature film. And it was in a little bit of legal limbo at the time, and I was able to show it at the film festival for free. And he said, oh, by the way, the actor Jeffrey Combs, you know, I can get him to come up. So we talked, and I got him to fly up here. And so the very first festival happened at Fifth Avenue Cinemas at Portland State University, and we had Jeffrey Combs and showed Necronomicon, Migliore and The Outsider, and John Stryzik and Aaron Vanek both flew out, and that was the very first one.
And now there's probably a lot more films that you show every year. Has it grown, like the number of films,
Sure.
the breadth? Where are you finding all these films?
Well, originally it was, I had recruit, or I'd be hunting constantly trying to find, little films that would pop up in the news and filter it. I'm using a service now called Without a Box, and so filmmakers submit, I get like 210, odd submissions a year. Mm-hmm. And from that I cull it down and show maybe 24 to 30, depending on the length. And that's basically how I do most of recruiting. I think the festival's been around long enough that people know about it, mm-hmm. So it's not as hard as it was early on in the early years. But I'm always amazed. Everyone told me in the beginning that it would never last more than a year or two. Mm-hmm. They said, you'll never find content. No one, it's just a one-time thing. And well, here I am, 14 years later.